My name is Jason Bennett, 32 years old, and I still remember checking my phone every 5 minutes on my wedding day, hoping for a text that never came. The church was beautiful, my bride radiant, but the first 2 rows on my side remained painfully empty. My parents chose to visit my sister Amelia's medical conference instead of attending the most important day of my life. That absence left a wound deeper than I could admit, until their perfect family facade finally shattered 6 months later. Before I tell this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Growing up in our pristine colonial home in suburban Connecticut, I learned early that our family had a distinct hierarchy. My sister Amelia wasn't just my parents' daughter. She was their masterpiece. 3 years younger than me, she managed to cast a shadow I could never escape. From the moment she brought home her first perfect spelling test in 1st grade, my parents, Robert and Margaret Bennett, knew they had produced something extraordinary. Amelia wasn't just smart, she was brilliant. By 12, she was taking high school math. By 16, she was publishing research papers with university professors. Her bedroom walls accumulated academic awards like other kids collected posters. Valedictorian, National Merit Scholar, full ride to Princeton followed by Harvard Medical School, every achievement meticulously documented in our family's endless photo albums. Then there was me, Jason Bennett, the decidedly average son. I wasn't a bad student. I consistently brought home B's with occasional A's in subjects I enjoyed. I played 2nd-string baseball, participated in drama club, and eventually graduated with a respectable GPA from Connecticut State. My achievements weren't failures, they just weren't exceptional. In the Bennett household, being ordinary was tantamount to disappointment. Jason tries hard. My mother would tell her friends with that particular smile, the one that conveyed sympathy for my mediocrity. My father would nod silently, then immediately pivot. Now, Amelia, she just submitted another research paper. The pattern was established early and reinforced consistently. Amelia's science fair victories warranted family celebrations at expensive restaurants. My solid performance in the regional baseball championship received a distracted, "Good job, son," while my father checked emails on his phone. My mother attended every single one of Amelia's academic competitions, even flying across the country when necessary, while consistently finding reasons to miss my baseball games or theater performances. The family photo wall in our living room told the story clearer than words ever could. Amelia's graduation portraits, high school and college, occupied prominent center positions. My graduation photo hung in the corner, partially obscured by a decorative sconce. Visitors to our home were invariably treated to elaborate stories of Amelia's accomplishments, while my existence merited brief mentions. I'll never forget my senior year high school play. After months of rehearsals, I landed the lead role in Our Town, the first real achievement that felt wholly mine. The night of the performance, I peeked through the curtain to see the seats reserved for my parents sitting empty. My stomach dropped, but I performed anyway, pushing through each line with growing hollowness. Later, I learned Amelia's science team had an unexpected competition opportunity the same weekend in Chicago. The choice for my parents wasn't even a choice at all. "You understand, don't you, Jason?" my mother said when they returned. "This could impact Amelia's college applications." I nodded and said I understood. What else could I do? Throughout college, I worked desperately to prove my worth. I graduated with honors in computer science, secured a well-paying software engineering job at a respected firm, and even purchased a modest home just 30 minutes from my parents. A peace offering of proximity, a silent plea to finally be seen. Then I met Rachel Mitchell during a company volunteer event building houses for veterans. She was there with her kindergarten class, supervising as they painted birdhouses while the adults handled construction. Something about her patient interactions with the children, her warm laugh, and the paint smudge on her cheek that she didn't know was there. I was instantly drawn to her authenticity. Our first date stretched from coffee to dinner as conversation flowed effortlessly. By our third date, I found myself telling Rachel things I'd never articulated aloud about growing up in Amelia's shadow, about the constant striving for approval that never came. Instead of the uncomfortable pity, I feared Rachel's brown eyes filled with indignation on my behalf. "Your achievements deserve celebration too, Jason," she said, squeezing my hand across the table. "You know that, right?" For the first time, I felt truly seen. Rachel built me up in ways my family never had, pointing out strengths I'd learned to dismiss. My patience solving complex coding problems. My natural ability to mediate conflicts at work. The kindness colleagues mentioned when she met them at company events. As our relationship deepened, Rachel gently encouraged me to establish healthier boundaries with my family. I resisted at first. Decades of seeking approval don't dissolve overnight. Besides, I reasoned they were still my parents. Family was family. The only family member who ever treated me as an equal was my Uncle William, my father's younger brother. Unlike my dad's perpetual seriousness, Uncle William laughed easily and listened intently. During family gatherings, he made a point of asking about my projects and achievements. "Your parents don't always see what's right in front of them," he once told me after witnessing a particularly dismissive comment from my father. "But I see you, Jason. Don't forget that." After 2 years of dating Rachel, I proposed during a weekend trip to the Maine coastline. When she said yes, wrapping her arms around my neck as waves crashed against the shore, I felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this milestone creating my own family would finally earn my parents' attention and approval. Perhaps now they would finally see me. The Sunday after our engagement, Rachel and I drove to my parents' house for their weekly family dinner, a tradition I maintained more out of obligation than enjoyment. I felt uncharacteristically optimistic, the weight of Rachel's engagement ring box in my pocket like a talisman. This news would surely elicit the warm reaction I'd been seeking for decades. "Mom, Dad, Amelia," I announced during dessert, my arm around Rachel's shoulders. "We have some news. Rachel and I are engaged." Rachel beamed, extending her hand to display the modest but elegant solitaire I'd selected. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt eternal. "Well," my mother finally said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, "that's certainly unexpected. Congratulations." My father nodded, offering a perfunctory handshake. "Good for you, son." Amelia, home for the weekend from her medical residency, offered slightly warmer congratulations before my mother pivoted the conversation. "You know, Amelia and Ethan have been discussing their future too. I wouldn't be surprised if we had another announcement soon." She winked at my sister, whose relationship with fellow Dr. Ethan Williams had been the subject of family dinner conversations for months. In the car afterward, Rachel squeezed my hand. "They'll come around," she whispered, though her eyes reflected my disappointment. "They're just surprised." The contrast between our family's reactions couldn't have been starker. When we shared our news with Rachel's parents, Daniel and Susan Mitchell, the following weekend, their genuine joy was overwhelming. Susan immediately embraced me, tears in her eyes. "We're so happy you'll be part of our family," she said. Daniel clapped me on the back, already talking about father-son fishing trips. They opened champagne called Relatives on Speakerphone and spent the evening looking through venue websites with infectious enthusiasm. As wedding planning began in earnest, the pattern continued. Rachel's parents eagerly attended every appointment from venue tours to cake tastings. My parents, meanwhile, found endless excuses. My mother missed our first venue walkthrough because of a committee meeting at her garden club. My father skipped the meeting with the caterer due to a work emergency that later, through a casual comment, I discovered had been a golf game. "Maybe we should postpone until next year," my mother suggested during one of the few planning discussions she participated in. "You've only been engaged a few months. There's no rush, is there?" When I explained we'd already secured our dream venue for the fall, she sighed. "It just seems like putting the cart before the horse. In traditional families, the older sister usually marries first." "Mom Amelia isn't even engaged yet," I pointed out. "Well, it's only a matter of time," she replied confidently. "And these things have a proper order." My father's contributions to wedding discussions centered primarily around cost, despite my assurances that Rachel and I were covering most expenses ourselves with generous help from her parents. "A smaller ceremony would be more sensible," he advised, even after I'd explained the guest list had already been finalized. "Something intimate, practical." The same man who had once commented that no expense would be spared for Amelia's eventual special day now examined our modest wedding budget with a banker's scrutiny. 3 months before our wedding, my parents hosted a family dinner that would prove pivotal. Rachel and I arrived to find the dining room decorated with flowers, champagne chilling in an ice bucket, unusual touches for a standard Sunday meal. The reason became clear when Amelia arrived with Ethan, her hand conspicuously showcasing a diamond ring that caught the light with blinding intensity. "We're engaged," she announced, though the staged setting made it obvious my parents had already been informed. What followed was a flurry of celebration unlike anything my engagement had received. My mother openly weeping with joy, my father making an uncharacteristically emotional toast, phone calls to extended family members right at the dinner table. As congratulations flowed, I felt Rachel tense beside me. I squeezed her hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. "You know," Amelia said, turning to us with what appeared to be sudden inspiration, though her tone suggested rehearsal. "Since Jason and Rachel's wedding is still a few months away, and Ethan and I are thinking of a winter ceremony we could consider a double wedding. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We could share the day." The eager nodding of my parents made it clear this wasn't Amelia's spontaneous idea. "Actually," Rachel said before I could respond, her voice calm but firm, "Jason and I have already finalized most of our plans. Our wedding is really important to us as the beginning of our life together, and we'd like to keep it as we've envisioned it. But we're so happy for you both, and look forward to helping with your wedding plans too." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. My mother's smile tightened. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably, and Amelia's expression flickered between surprise and annoyance before settling on forced understanding. "Of course," she said. "It was just a thought." The tension between our families grew as the wedding approached. During a disastrous joint family dinner, Susan Mitchell directly addressed my parents' lackluster involvement after my mother made another comment about rushing into marriage. "Jason and Rachel have been together for over 2 years, Susan said. "They're mature adults who know what they want. I'm surprised you're not more excited about your only son's wedding." The resulting argument was only smoothed over by Rachel's and my desperate peacekeeping efforts, but the damage was done. The two sets of parents maintained rigid politeness at subsequent wedding events. But warmth was notably absent. As our wedding date grew closer, my anxiety increased proportionally. I began having trouble sleeping, worrying about everything from family tensions to worst-case scenarios of public arguments during the reception. After Rachel gently suggested it might help, I reluctantly scheduled an appointment with Dr. Patterson, a therapist whose card I'd been carrying in my wallet for weeks. "What you're describing is a common dynamic in families with perfectionism at their core," Dr. Patterson explained during our session. "Your sister became the repository for your parents' ambitions and definition of success, while you were cast in a supporting role." "But they're not bad people," I insisted, feeling strangely defensive despite initiating the conversation. "This isn't about good or bad people," Dr. Patterson replied kindly. "It's about patterns that develop in families often unconsciously. Your parents may not even realize the impact of their behavior, but recognizing these patterns is the first step toward establishing healthier relationships, not just with them, but in your new marriage as well. I left the session with a mix of validation and discomfort. Naming the dynamic felt both liberating and terrifying. What would it mean to stop seeking the approval I'd chased my entire life? 1 week before the wedding, my phone rang while Rachel and I were finalizing seating arrangements. Seeing my mother's name on the screen, I answered immediately, still harboring hope for a last-minute surge of parental enthusiasm. "Jason, we have a situation," my mother began without preamble. "Amelia's been invited to present her research at an international medical conference in Boston. It's an incredible opportunity the same weekend as your wedding." My stomach dropped as I immediately understood what was coming. "The thing is," she continued, her voice taking on the reasonable tone she used when delivering disappointing news, "this could really advance her career. These invitation spots usually go to senior physicians, not residents. We can't let her go alone, she'll need support." I gripped the phone tighter. "Mom, it's my wedding." "I know, sweetheart, and we're so sorry about the timing. But surely you understand how important this is for Amelia's future. Your father and I need to be there for her big moment." "What about my big moment?" The words escaped before I could filter them. A pause. "Jason, you have Rachel and her family. Amelia only has us. We'll try our best to make it back for at least part of the reception if the presentation finishes early. The conference is only in Boston, after all." After disconnecting, I sat motionless at the kitchen table. Rachel found me there 10 minutes later, staring at nothing. "They're not coming," I said flatly when she asked what was wrong. As I explained the situation, Rachel's expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to outrage. "They're skipping our wedding for a conference, are you kidding me?" I shook my head, a lifetime of disappointment crystallizing into this final rejection. "It's Amelia's conference. That's all that matters." Rachel called her parents that night. Their reaction matched hers, pure indignation on my behalf. Daniel Mitchell immediately offered to stand in for father of the groom duties. Susan promised to help fill the family void with extended relatives and friends. Their protective outrage was touching, but it couldn't fill the hollow space expanding in my chest. My best friend Trevor was less diplomatic when I told him. "That's messed up, man. Seriously messed up." He immediately organized the groomsmen to arrive early on the wedding day, ensuring I'd be surrounded by support. "Family isn't always blood," he reminded me. "Remember that." The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, the perfect October day we'd hoped for. Despite everything, I felt a surge of joy knowing I would marry Rachel in just a few hours. Still, I couldn't stop checking my phone, holding onto a sliver of hope that my parents might have reconsidered. No messages appeared except well wishes from friends, and a text from Uncle William confirming he'd arrived in town. Uncle William came to my hotel suite while I was getting ready earlier than the scheduled time for family photos. He took one look at my face and understood everything. "My brother is an idiot," he said bluntly, straightening my tie with paternal care. "I want you to know I tried to talk sense into him. Into both of them." I swallowed hard, focusing on my cufflinks. "Thanks for coming, Uncle William. It means a lot." "Jason, look at me," he said, his hands on my shoulders. "I've watched you grow from a thoughtful boy into a man of integrity and kindness. I've seen how you've built a career through hard work and intelligence, and I've seen how you treat Rachel with the respect and love that makes a marriage work. I am incredibly proud of you. Your parents' absence today is their loss, a moment they can never get back. Don't let it diminish your joy." His words broke something open inside me. For a moment I couldn't speak. "Would you?" I finally managed. "Would you walk with me down the aisle, stand in for my dad?" Uncle William's eyes glistened. "It would be my greatest honor." The ceremony itself was beautiful. Rachel took my breath away as she walked toward me, her eyes never leaving mine. When the minister asked who supported this union, Uncle William stood proudly. Daniel Mitchell, sitting in the front row where my parents should have been, gave me a supportive nod. But the empty chairs haunted me. During the reception, I caught glimpses of people noticing the absence, whispering questions. Rachel's father gave a heartfelt toast, carefully avoiding direct mention of my parents, while emphasizing the importance of choosing to be present for loved ones' important moments. "Family is built not just through blood, but through choices," he said, raising his glass. "Through showing up, through celebrating each other's joys, and supporting each other through challenges. Today we welcome Jason into our family, not just as a legal formality, but with our whole hearts." Later that evening, while Rachel danced with her cousins, I checked my phone one last time. No messages from my parents, but Amelia had posted on Instagram a smiling photo with our parents at her medical conference, captioned, "So grateful for my amazing support system, always being there for the big moments, #blessed. Future of surgery." The timestamp showed it had been taken during our ceremony. I shut off my phone for the rest of the night, determined to focus on the people who had chosen to be present. We danced, laughed, and celebrated with friends and Rachel's loving family. If anyone noticed the tight set of my jaw or my occasional distant gaze, they didn't mention it. Our honeymoon in Hawaii provided a welcome escape. For 2 weeks, surrounded by ocean beauty and wrapped in Rachel's love, I could almost forget the wedding day betrayal. Almost. The pain surfaced in quiet moments watching other families on the beach, overhearing a father-son conversation at dinner. "It doesn't just go away," Rachel acknowledged one night as we watched the sunset. "And that's okay. I'm here through all of it." When we returned home, a card from my parents waited in our mail pile. Inside was a generic, "Congratulations on your wedding" message, with their signatures nothing personalized, no acknowledgement of their absence, just a check that felt more like an obligation than a gift. 2 weeks later came the first family gathering since the wedding, a dinner at my parents' house that Rachel and I debated attending before reluctantly agreeing we should go. My parents greeted us as if nothing had happened. My mother hugged me with her usual brisk affection. My father shook my hand firmly, and both cooed appropriately over our honeymoon photos. Not once did either of them mention missing the wedding. Not a single apology or explanation was offered. The elaborate absence became the elephant in the room that no one, not even Amelia, acknowledged. "Did that really just happen?" Rachel whispered as we drove home afterward. "Did they seriously pretend everything was normal?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Welcome to the Bennett family special denial with a side of gaslighting." Rachel's hand found mine. "That's not okay, Jason. You know that, right?" I did know. For perhaps the first time, I truly knew it wasn't okay. But knowing and acting were different things, and decades of family conditioning weren't easily overcome. So I continued to attend family functions, continued to accept the unspoken demand to pretend that missing my wedding was a reasonable parental choice. Meanwhile, Rachel's anger toward my parents simmered beneath a veneer of politeness. I could see it in her eyes during family gatherings, hear it in her carefully measured responses to my mother's comments. My loyal defender holding back for my sake alone. 3 months after our wedding, the Bennett family focus had fully shifted to Amelia and Ethan's upcoming nuptials. My mother called weekly with updates on their plans, the prestigious cathedral they'd secured, the renowned chef catering their reception, the custom gown being designed for Amelia. "The engagement party is set for the 15th, she informed me during one such call. "At the Westport Country Club. Black tie, of course." I marked the date without comment, though the contrast to our own engagement, acknowledged with a casual dinner at my parents' house, wasn't lost on me. When the formal invitation arrived, embossed in gold on heavy cardstock, Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Quite the production." "We should go," I said, though without enthusiasm. "Keep the peace." Rachel studied me for a moment. "Are we keeping the peace, or are we enabling behavior that hurts you?" It was a fair question, one I wasn't ready to answer. Just this once, I compromised. We'll go just this once, and then maybe take a break from family events for a while. The engagement party was exactly as elaborate as expected. The country club ballroom gleamed with white roses, and crystal champagne flowed freely, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. My parents worked the room like politicians, my father's hand proudly on Amelia's shoulder as he introduced her and Ethan to their social circle. "You'd think they were announcing a royal wedding," Rachel murmured as we watched from our table. Throughout the evening, I noticed several of my parents' friends approaching us with curious expressions. Mrs. Harrison, who had known our family for decades, sat down beside me during dinner. "Jason, dear, we missed you at the club's charity gala last month," she said, patting my hand. "Your mother mentioned you were traveling for work." I frowned slightly. "No, I was in town. We had a quiet weekend at home." "Oh." Her surprise seemed genuine. "Well, that's odd. When I asked about you and mentioned we hadn't seen you at your wedding, she said you'd had a very small ceremony because you were saving for a house. But didn't you buy your place last year?" Before I could respond, I overheard my mother at the next table explaining to another friend. "Of course, we were devastated to miss Jason's wedding, but these things happen. The ceremony was very small anyway, just a few friends at the courthouse, nothing like what Amelia is planning." The blatant lie knocked the wind from me. Our wedding had hosted 150 guests at one of Connecticut's most picturesque historic venues, hardly a courthouse affair. As the evening progressed, I found myself observing Amelia with new eyes. Behind her perfect smile, I noticed signs of strain, the way she repeatedly checked her phone, how her champagne glass was never less than half empty, the tight grip she maintained on Ethan's arm even as his attention wandered to other guests. During a momentary lull, I spotted Ethan near the bar, leaning too close to a blonde woman I didn't recognize. His hand rested casually on her lower back as he whispered something that made her laugh. When he pulled out his phone and she entered what appeared to be her number, I felt a surge of protective anger for my sister, despite our complicated relationship. Excusing myself to use the restroom, I passed by Ethan's discarded suit jacket draped over a chair. His phone screen lit up with an incoming text visible to anyone passing by. "Can't wait for next week when she's at that conference. My place or yours, Melissa." Below it was a notification from someone named Jessica. "Last night was amazing. When can I see you again?" I stood frozen, unsure what to do with this information. The honorable thing would be telling Amelia, but our relationship had grown so distant. Would she even believe me, or would she see it as jealousy or sabotage? That night I confided in Rachel about what I'd seen. "I should tell her right. Even though we're not close, she deserves to know before she marries him." Rachel nodded slowly. "It's the right thing to do. But Jason, be prepared, she might not thank you for it. People often shoot the messenger." The next day, I called Amelia and asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. She sounded surprised, but agreed. We met at a quiet cafe near her apartment the first time we'd been alone together in months. "What's this about?" she asked after brief small talk, checking her watch. "I have rounds in an hour." "Amelia, I saw something at your engagement party," I began carefully. Something about Ethan that concerned me. I explained what I'd witnessed and the texts I'd seen. As I spoke, I expected shock, perhaps tears. Instead, Amelia's expression hardened into something cold and dismissive. "Are you serious right now?" she finally said. "You're trying to sabotage my relationship because you're jealous of my engagement? Because Mom and Dad are excited about my wedding?" "What? No, Amelia, that's not." "Save it, Jason." She stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "I know Ethan has female colleagues he texts about work. Unlike you, I don't jump to ridiculous conclusions because I'm insecure. Not everyone has your simple life and mediocre ambitions." She left me sitting there, stunned by the venom in her voice. It was the first time Amelia had ever directly referenced the family dynamic, the golden child versus the disappointment, and her words stung precisely because they confirmed what I'd always suspected she thought of me. In the weeks that followed, I noticed troubling patterns in Amelia's behavior during family gatherings. The increased drinking, the nervous energy, the frequent trips to the bathroom with her purse. At one Sunday dinner, I accidentally walked in on her in our parents' home office, hastily pocketing what looked like prescription bottles from our father's medicine cabinet. When our eyes met, hers were defiant. "Migraine medication," she said shortly. "I get them from stress." But the orange prescription bottles didn't look like any migraine medication I recognized, and the furtive way she'd grabbed them suggested something more concerning. Meanwhile, my parents remained oblivious, focused entirely on creating the perfect wedding for their perfect daughter. During dinner discussions, they spoke of nothing but venue details and guest lists, while Amelia grew visibly thinner and more agitated beside them. "Has Amelia seemed off to you lately?" I asked my mother privately after one such dinner. She waved away my concern. "She's just busy with wedding planning on top of her residency. Amelia has always thrived under pressure, unlike some people who get overwhelmed by ordinary life stressors." The pointed look she gave me made it clear who those "some people" were. Despite everything, I felt genuine concern for my sister. After our disastrous coffee meeting, I tried reaching out again. Texts, checking in, offers to help with wedding tasks, even an email detailing resources for Dr. Burnout that I framed as something I'd stumbled across that might help her colleagues. Each attempt was met with increasingly hostile rejections. "Stop pretending you care," her final text read. "We both know you're just waiting for me to fail so you can finally be the favorite. It's not going to happen, so back off." Her words hurt, but more concerning was what they revealed about her mindset. The apparent belief that any show of care must have ulterior motives, that family relationships were purely competitive. It was a toxic perspective I recognized from my own darkest thoughts. But seeing it reflected so baldly in Amelia's message suggested she was struggling more than anyone realized. 6 months after my wedding day betrayal, the Bennett family gathered for the most elaborate pre-wedding celebration yet, Amelia and Ethan's engagement gala. Unlike the earlier engagement party, this event was designed to impress the medical community elite. The Westport Country Club's grand ballroom had been transformed with ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and centerpieces that reportedly cost more than Rachel's entire wedding dress. "Subtle," Rachel murmured as we entered, her hand tight in mine. My parents greeted us with their usual perfunctory warmth before quickly returning to their hosting duties. Throughout the evening, they paraded Amelia and Ethan around the room like prized thoroughbreds, introducing them to hospital directors and medical research funders with barely concealed pride. I watched Amelia carefully. She looked beautiful in her designer gown, but alarmingly thin. Her smile seemed fixed in place, her eyes slightly unfocused. She clutched her champagne glass like a lifeline, and I noticed it was refilled at least 5 times in the first hour alone. More concerning was Ethan's behavior. Now that I was watching for it, his indiscretions were painfully obvious. He disappeared with a pharmaceutical rep for 20 minutes, returning with his tie slightly askew. Later, I observed him openly flirting with a nurse from Amelia's hospital, his hand lingering on her arm while Amelia was occupied with guests across the room. Tension built throughout the evening like a gathering storm. I caught Amelia watching Ethan's interactions, her expression growing darker with each observed transgression. She drank steadily, her movements becoming less precise as the night progressed. Around 10 o'clock, the moment finally broke. Ethan, visibly intoxicated, was whispering something to a young woman by the dessert table, his hand inappropriately low on her back. Amelia approached them with deceptive calmness, champagne glass in hand. "Having fun?" she asked, her voice carrying in a sudden lull in conversation. Ethan straightened, flashing his practiced smile. "Amelia, I was just telling Amanda here about our honeymoon plans." "Interesting." Amelia replied, her voice unnaturally controlled. Especially since we haven't finalized any honeymoon plans, unless you've been making arrangements with someone else. A uncomfortable silence fell over nearby guests. My mother appeared as if summoned by some parental radar for potential scandal, my father close behind. "Amelia, darling," my mother said brightly, "I think the quartet is ready for your special song. Why don't we—" "No, Mother." Amelia's voice cut like glass. "I think it's time we had some honesty at a Bennett family function, for once." She turned back to Ethan, whose smile had faltered. "Tell them, Ethan. Tell everyone about Melissa and Jessica, and probably Amanda here too." Ethan's face flushed. "You're drunk, Amelia. Let's discuss this privately." "I'm not nearly drunk enough." She laughed a brittle sound. "But yes, I've been drinking, just like I've been taking Dad's Xanax and Mom's Ambien. Whatever gets me through the day, knowing my fiancé is sleeping with half the hospital staff, while my parents plan the wedding of the century for their perfect daughter, who's actually falling apart." Gasps rippled through the gathering crowd. My father stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. "Amelia, that's enough. You're making a scene." "A scene?" Amelia's voice rose dangerously. "Heaven forbid a Bennett makes a scene. We can't have that, can we? Perfect family, perfect daughter, perfect wedding, who cares if it's all a lie?" Ethan, clearly sensing disaster, attempted damage control. "She's been under a lot of pressure," he explained to the staring guests. "Residency hours are brutal, and with the wedding planning—" "Don't you dare!" Amelia hissed, turning on him. "Don't pretend you care now. I saw the texts, Ethan. All of them. The nurses, the reps, your ex, how many are there? 5, 10. Cornered, Ethan's expression shifted from conciliatory to cold. "You want honesty, fine. Yes, I've been seeing other people. It's not like you're actually present in this relationship. You're either working, studying, or so medicated you can barely function. Your perfect doctor act is a fraud. You're a mess, Amelia." The room went deadly silent. My mother swayed slightly, my father's face drained of color, and Amelia, strong, perfect. Amelia looked suddenly small and devastated. I moved toward her instinctively, but my mother got there first, grabbing Amelia's arm. "We're taking this conversation somewhere private. Now." The Bennett damage control machine shifted into high gear. My father smoothly addressed the guests something about family discussions and appreciate your understanding, while my mother steered Amelia toward a private room off the main hall. I followed with Rachel close behind, unwilling to let Amelia face this alone, despite our strained relationship. In the privacy of the club's library, Amelia finally broke. Her perfect posture crumpled as she sank into a leather chair, tears streaming down her face. "He's been cheating for months," she sobbed. "I knew, and I just kept going, because stopping would mean failing, and Bennetts don't fail." My mother paced frantically. "This can be fixed. We'll speak with Ethan privately, work something out. No one needs to know about this indiscretion." "Indiscretion?" I echoed incredulously. "Mom, he admitted to cheating with multiple women, in public." "These things happen in high-pressure careers," my father interjected, straightening his tie. "Many successful marriages weather these storms. The important thing is maintaining appearances while we sort this out." My mother nodded vigorously. "Exactly. Amelia, darling, go clean yourself up. Your father will speak with Ethan. We can salvage this." I stared at them in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? You're more concerned with appearances than the fact that your daughter just had a breakdown in front of 200 people, that she admitted to abusing prescription medications." My mother turned on me, eyes flashing. "This wouldn't have happened if you'd told us what you knew about Ethan sooner. You must have noticed something." The unfairness of the accusation hit me like a physical blow. I tried to tell Amelia what I saw. She accused me of being jealous and trying to sabotage her. "Perhaps if you'd been more supportive of your sister, instead of always competing with her," my father began. "Competing?" I laughed incredulously. "I've never been competition. I've been an afterthought my entire life. You missed my wedding for her conference, for God's sake." Rachel stepped forward, her calm voice cutting through the tension. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, with all due respect, your daughter needs help right now, not damage control. She just admitted to substance abuse. That should be your priority." My father's response was to turn to Ethan, who had just entered the room. "Let's discuss this situation like reasonable men," he said in his business negotiation voice. "I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that satisfies everyone." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of arrangement?" "The wedding represents significant invested capital," my father continued. "Deposits arrangements, not to mention the social implications of cancellation. Perhaps some financial consideration could smooth over this misunderstanding." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're trying to bribe him to go through with the wedding after everything that just happened." For the first time in my adult life, I found myself truly furious with my parents. Not hurt, not disappointed, genuinely angry at their warped priorities and the damage they had inflicted on both their children, with their obsession with appearances. "This stops now," I said firmly. "This perfect family fantasy you've cultivated has hurt everyone in this room. Can't you see what it's done to Amelia? What it's doing to all of us?" My mother glared at me. "Don't be dramatic, Jason. This isn't about you." "It's about all of us," I insisted. "It's about the impossible standards you've set, the conditional love you've offered, present only when we perform to your expectations. It's about missing your son's wedding because your daughter's career advancement took priority. It's about caring more about what the country club crowd thinks than whether your children are actually happy." Amelia, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly doubled over, clutching her stomach. "I don't feel right," she mumbled, her words slurring. "Everything's spinning." Her face had taken on an alarming grayish tone, her breathing shallow. Rachel immediately knelt beside her, checking her pulse. "How much have you had to drink?" she asked urgently. "And what medication did you take?" Amelia's response was barely audible. "Xanax. Before the party. Then the champagne. Maybe some of those pills in my purse. Don't remember." Rachel looked up at us, her expression grave. "She needs medical attention. Now. This could be a dangerous interaction." The next moments passed in a blur. My father called for an ambulance, while my mother hovered uselessly, repeating, "This can't be happening," like a mantra. Ethan, displaying perhaps his first moment of genuine concern, mentioned he was a doctor and began checking Amelia's vital signs. As the paramedics arrived and loaded my barely conscious sister onto a stretcher, the carefully constructed Bennett family image finally shattered completely. There was no hiding this, no spinning it into something socially acceptable. The truth was exposed for everyone to see, not just Ethan's infidelity or Amelia's substance abuse, but the toxic family dynamic that had contributed to both. Standing in the country club parking lot, watching the ambulance pull away, my mother turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "How did we get here?" she whispered, looking suddenly old and lost. For once, I had no comforting response, no reassurance that everything would be okay. The facade had crumbled, and underneath was a mess that had been brewing for decades. "We need to go to the hospital," was all I said. "Our sister needs us now." The hospital waiting room became our family's reckoning ground. My parents sat stiffly in molded plastic chairs, my mother occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, my father staring stonily at the wall opposite. Rachel and I occupied chairs nearby, close enough to receive updates, but maintaining a deliberate distance from the toxic parental energy. Uncle William arrived shortly after midnight, having been called by a family friend who witnessed the engagement party implosion. He approached me first, squeezing my shoulder supportively before addressing my parents. "How is she?" he asked simply. "Stable," my father replied tersely. "They pumped her stomach and are monitoring her. They're calling it an accidental overdose." "Accidental?" my mother echoed, as if testing the word's plausibility. Uncle William sat down heavily beside them. "Robert, Margaret, We need to talk about how things got to this point. My father straightened defensively. This isn't the time for blame, William. It's not about blame, Uncle William replied gently. It's about recognition. Something has been broken in this family for a long time. Tonight just brought it to the surface. My mother's composure finally cracked. We gave our children everything. The best schools, every opportunity. How dare you suggest? You gave them things, Uncle William interrupted, and expectations. But did you give them unconditional support? Acceptance, the freedom to be human and imperfect. The question hung in the air unanswerable, because its truth was self-evident. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital waiting room, the Bennett family mythology couldn't survive. A doctor appeared then, clipboard in hand. Bennett family Amelia is awake. She's asking for her brother. The surprise on my parents' faces might have been comical in another context. They clearly expected to be the first ones called. I stood squeezing Rachel's hand before following the doctor down the sterile hallway. Amelia looked small in the hospital bed, IV lines snaking from her arm, monitoring equipment beeping softly beside her. Her perfect hair was tangled, her makeup smeared. She looked more human than I had seen her in years. "Hey," I said softly, taking the chair beside her bed. "Hey." Her voice was raspy. Guess I really screwed up the perfect daughter act, huh? I think we're both officially off script now. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You tried to warn me about Ethan. I did. I was horrible to you. I shrugged. We've both said things we regret. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. I knew, you know, about them missing your wedding from my conference. I told them not to come with me, that your wedding was more important. They insisted. She looked away. Part of me was glad they chose me. Again. How messed up is that? It's not messed up, I said quietly. It's what they trained us for, to compete for their approval. To see each other as rivals instead of allies. She nodded slowly. When did you figure it out, that their love was conditional? I think I always knew, I admitted. But I didn't want to believe it, so I kept trying to earn what should have been freely given. We talked for nearly an hour, really talked perhaps for the first time since childhood, about growing up under our parents' expectations, about the damage done by being the perfect child and the ordinary one, about the medications Amelia had been taking to cope with the pressure and the warning signs everyone had missed or ignored. When my parents were finally allowed in, Amelia surprised all of us. I want to see a therapist, she announced without preamble, and I think we should all go to family therapy. My mother blanched. Therapy, darling, that's so public. Perhaps a private retreat would be more appropriate. No, mother, Amelia said firmly. Actual therapy, with a licensed professional. The hospital psychiatrist already recommended someone who specializes in family dynamics and addiction recovery. Addiction is a strong word, my father protested. It's the accurate word, Amelia countered. I've been using prescription drugs to cope with anxiety for over a year. I need help, and our family needs help too. My parents exchanged alarmed glances, clearly calculating the social implications of mental health treatment. But Amelia held firm, and for once they had no choice but to concede. Their perfect daughter was demanding honesty, and denying her would only confirm the dysfunction she was naming. 2 weeks later, we gathered for our first family therapy session. Dr. Matthews, a compassionate but no-nonsense therapist in her 50s, wasted no time in identifying the problematic patterns. What I'm seeing, she explained after our initial introductions, is a family system built around performance and external validation. Robert and Margaret, you've created a hierarchy where love and approval must be earned through achievement. This has created a competition between your children and a deeply insecure attachment style for both of them. My parents shifted uncomfortably on the office sofa. That's a rather simplistic analysis, my father objected. We've always loved both our children. "Love isn't just a feeling, Mr. Bennett," Dr. Matthews replied. "It's demonstrated through actions. Jason, would you share how you felt when your parents missed your wedding?" Put on the spot, I hesitated. For decades, I'd swallowed my feelings to keep peace. Speaking truth felt dangerous, but Rachel's supportive presence beside me gave me courage. I felt disposable, I finally said. Like I had never really mattered. Like everything I suspected about my place in the family was confirmed. My mother gasped. "That's not fair. We've always—" "Let him finish," Dr. Matthews interrupted gently. "This is Jason's experience, and it's valid whether you agree with it or not. Once the dam broke, years of suppressed hurt poured out. I spoke about growing up in Amelia's shadow, about the constant striving for approval that never came about, the wedding absence that had crystallized the family's priorities so painfully. My parents listened with growing distress, my mother eventually dissolving into tears. "We didn't know," she kept saying. "We didn't realize." "That's the problem," Amelia interjected, surprising me with her support. "You never looked beyond your expectations to see what was actually happening to us. You never asked if we were happy, only if we were successful." The session was brutally difficult, but something shifted that day. For the first time, our family's dysfunction was named aloud rather than carefully maintained. My parents' defenses were strong. Decades of justification don't crumble in an hour, but cracks had formed. As therapy continued over the following weeks, more truths emerged. My mother reluctantly acknowledged her own upbringing in a high-pressure household where achievements were the only currency of worth. My father admitted that his focus on Amelia's career stemmed partly from regrets about his own professional choices. Amelia, now in individual therapy as well as family sessions, began the difficult work of building an identity separate from her achievements. She ended her engagement to Ethan permanently, took a leave of absence from her residency, and started volunteering at a community clinic, work she found more fulfilling than the prestigious hospital position she'd been pursuing to please our parents. The most surprising moment came during our fourth session, when my mother broke down completely while discussing the wedding she had missed. "I've been so blind," she sobbed, looking directly at me for what felt like the first time in years. "So caught up in this image of what our family should be that I missed what it actually was. Jason, I failed you as a mother. I'm truly sorry." Her apology wasn't perfect. It didn't erase years of damage or immediately heal our relationship. But it was genuine, and it was a beginning. My father struggled more with accountability. His identity was so thoroughly entwined with the successful family narrative that admitting its toxicity threatened his sense of self. But even he began to make small efforts, asking about my work with actual interest, remembering details about Rachel's teaching career, sending occasional texts just to check in. During this period of family reconstruction, Rachel shared news that would further transform our dynamics. She was pregnant. We had been trying since shortly after the wedding, and the positive test came at a poignant time, just as my family was learning what really mattered. When we shared the news, my parents' reaction was mixed. There was genuine excitement, but also visible uncertainty about their role in this new chapter. Would they be allowed to be grandparents after failing so profoundly as parents? The question hung unspoken between us. "We'd like you to be involved in our child's life," I told them carefully. "But things need to be different. This child won't grow up feeling they have to earn love through achievement. They won't be compared to cousins or measured against external standards of success." My mother nodded solemnly. "We want to do better, Jason. We want the chance to get it right this time." "It's not about getting it right," Rachel said gently. "It's about being present, about loving without conditions." My father, in a rare moment of emotional honesty, wiped away a tear. "We'll try," he promised. "We're learning." And they were. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely learning. 1 year after the engagement party disaster, Rachel and I were preparing our modest suburban home for the imminent arrival of our daughter. The nursery, painted a soft seafoam green, was nearly complete crib, assembled tiny clothes washed and folded, stuffed animals arranged on floating shelves. Standing in the doorway, watching Rachel arrange books on the small bookcase, her 8-month pregnant belly prominent under her t-shirt, I was struck by how much had changed in 12 months. Not just externally, but within our family's emotional landscape. The transformation hadn't been linear or easy. Family healing rarely is. There were therapy sessions where we seemed to move backward rather than forward. Sunday dinners that ended in renewed tension. Moments when old patterns reasserted themselves, and I found myself slipping into the familiar role of peacekeeper, swallowing my truth to maintain harmony. But there was progress too genuine and meaningful. Amelia had made the most dramatic changes. After completing 2 months of outpatient treatment for anxiety and prescription drug dependency, she made the bold decision not to return to her surgical residency. Instead, she accepted a position with a rural healthcare initiative providing primary care to underserved communities. For the first time, I'm doing medicine because it fulfills me, not because it fulfills some external definition of success, she told me over coffee during one of our newly established monthly sibling meetups. And the weird thing is, I think I'm actually better at it now. Our relationship had transformed from distant competitors to something approaching genuine siblings. We still hit rough patches. Decades of conditioning don't disappear overnight, but we were learning to be allies rather than rivals. My parents' journey was more complicated. They attended therapy faithfully, but old habits remained entrenched. My mother still occasionally made comments about appearances that revealed her underlying priorities. My father still struggled to express emotion directly, but they were trying, and their effort itself represented significant change. My mother had taken to calling Rachel weekly, asking about the pregnancy, and offering to help with nursery preparations. Though her suggestions sometimes veered toward the extravagant, every baby needs a hand-painted mural, the underlying desire to connect seemed genuine. My father's attempts at connection were more awkward, but equally meaningful. He'd email me articles about software development or new tech trends, his way of showing interest in my career. And one Saturday, he appeared at our door with tools and a determined expression. "Thought you might want help with the nursery furniture," he said gruffly. Together, we assembled the crib and changing table, working mostly in silence, punctuated by practical comments about Allen wrenches and instruction diagrams. As we finished, he ran his hand along the crib railing with unexpected tenderness. "Your mother and I were so busy proving ourselves as parents that we missed actually being parents," he said suddenly. "Don't make our mistake, Jason." It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. Uncle William remained our family's emotional anchor throughout this transformation. He visited regularly, bringing practical baby gifts and sage advice. "Family healing isn't about erasing the past," he reminded me during one visit. "It's about acknowledging it honestly so it doesn't control the future." When Rachel went into labor 3 weeks early, the family dynamics we'd been carefully rebuilding faced their first real test. We called my parents from the hospital, letting them know their granddaughter was arriving sooner than expected. "We're in Boston for the weekend," my mother explained, anxiety edging her voice. "But we'll leave right now. It's about a 3-hour drive. Will we make it in time?" The parallel to our wedding day wasn't lost on any of us, another important event, another absence. But this time the absence wasn't a choice but a circumstance, and their immediate response was to prioritize being present. "Just drive safely," I assured her. "These things usually take a while." Rachel's labor progressed faster than expected, however. Our daughter, Emma Willow Bennett, arrived after just 4 hours, healthy, red-faced, and determined, with a shock of dark hair and a powerful set of lungs. Holding her for the first time, I felt a love so immediate and unconditional that it brought clarity to everything I'd missed growing up. This was how it should have been. Love freely given, not requiring achievement or performance, simply celebrating existence. When my parents arrived 2 hours after Emma's birth, they entered the hospital room with uncharacteristic hesitation. "We're so sorry we're late," my mother said, echoing their wedding absence in a way that felt deliberate, acknowledging the parallel. "You're here now," Rachel said kindly from the bed our daughter nestled in her arms. "Would you like to meet your granddaughter?" The moment my mother held Emma, something visibly shifted in her. Tears streamed freely down her face, not the controlled, dignified tears she allowed at socially appropriate moments, but raw, unfiltered emotion. "She's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "Not perfect," I corrected gently. "Just exactly who she's supposed to be." My mother's eyes met mine, understanding dawning. "Yes," she agreed. "Exactly who she's supposed to be." My father, watching from a slight distance, seemed uncertain of his place until Rachel beckoned him closer. When he finally held his granddaughter, his usual stoicism cracked completely. None of us had ever seen him cry before, yet tears fell openly as he cradled Emma's tiny form. "I'm going to do better with her," he promised, looking directly at me. "And with you." In the weeks that followed, our families merged in ways I couldn't have imagined a year earlier. Rachel's parents, who had been my surrogate family when my own was absent, embraced their co-grandparent role with characteristic warmth. Susan Mitchell taught my mother how to properly swaddle a baby, while Daniel and my father discovered a shared interest in woodworking, planning a joint project to build Emma a rocking horse for her first birthday. Amelia became a devoted aunt, visiting whenever her rural clinic schedule allowed. "I'm going to make sure she knows her worth isn't measured by achievements," she promised, tickling Emma's tiny feet. "That's what awesome aunts are for." 6 months after Emma's birth, we gathered for her naming ceremony, a small, meaningful event in our backyard. Both sets of grandparents were present, along with Amelia, Uncle William, and close friends. As I looked around at this imperfect but healing circle of people, I realized we had created something my parents had always sought, but never achieved. Not a perfect family, but an authentic one. Later that evening, as Rachel and I sat on the porch watching the sunset while Emma slept inside, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. "You know," I said, "for most of my life, I thought happiness would come from finally earning my parents' approval, from being good enough for them to truly see me." Rachel squeezed my hand, waiting for me to continue. "But that was never going to work because the problem wasn't that I wasn't enough. The problem was that they were looking for the wrong things. Real happiness came when I stopped seeking their validation and started building a life based on what actually matters. Love that doesn't have to be earned, connections that value authenticity over achievement." "You've come a long way," Rachel observed. "We all have." Indeed we had. My parents were not perfect grandparents. Occasionally old patterns emerged in comments about other babies or subtle comparisons. But they caught themselves more often than not visibly working to break habits of a lifetime. They showed up consistently prioritizing family gatherings over social obligations for perhaps the first time. Amelia had found a new confidence in her rural medicine career, recently beginning a relationship with another doctor who valued work-life balance and community service. "I'm dating someone who likes me for who I am, not what I achieve," she told me with wonder in her voice. "It's strange, but good." As for me, I was learning that forgiveness wasn't a single decision, but a daily practice. There were still moments when old hurts resurfaced, when I questioned my parents' transformation or feared reverting to established family patterns. But I was also discovering that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about preventing it from determining the future. The family photograph taken at Emma's naming ceremony told our story better than words could. Unlike the perfectly posed, artificially smiling portraits that had lined my parents' hallway throughout my childhood. This picture captured authentic joy, my father laughing at something Uncle William had said, my mother with a smudge of cake frosting on her cheek, Amelia making a silly face at Emma, Rachel and I looking at each other with unguarded love. Not perfect, real, and infinitely more valuable because of it. So that's my story, how a wedding day absence exposed the cracks in our perfect family facade, and how those cracks ultimately allowed light to enter. If you're watching this and recognize your own family and ours, know that healing is possible, though it requires unflinching honesty and the courage to set boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our family is to stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I'd love to hear about your experiences with family healing in the comments below. Have you had to confront painful family dynamics to move forward? What helped your family begin healing? And if you found value in this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more authentic conversations about family relationships. Remember, the most meaningful connections aren't built on perfection, but on truth, forgiveness, and the willingness to begin again. Thank you for listening, and may your own family journey lead to genuine connection rather than perfect appearances.